Testing 1 2, 1 2 3. Testing 1 2.
Thank you. Okay, you're very welcome. I have to read a statement out. You're welcome to a regulatory section of the hybrid meeting, the Planning and Regulatory Services Committee. You can ask everyone to please mute their mics at all times unless invited to speak. For those who are physically in the chamber, can I remind you that when speaking into your microphone, wait until you see yourself on the screen so as the live feed can pick up your comments. If you speak before your image is projected, those listening on the live feed or via Zoom will not hear what you say. This is obviously important in the case of a vote being required. Audio recording is being used to assist in preparing the formal minutes. Therefore, anyone participating in the meeting consents to it being recorded and being live streamed on YouTube. So I'll take apologies if there be any that we know of. Okay, declarations of interest, we'll take them in the usual way as we move through the agenda. We'll go to item 3, which is it's an item for decision. It's a public consultation on the review of permitted development rates, and Roisin's going to bring this report. So when you're ready, Roisin, thanks.
Thank you, Chair. In October 2022, the Department for Infrastructure issued a consultation paper to seek views on the Department's proposals to amend the General Permitted Development Order to change permitted development rights for domestic microgeneration equipment and reverse vending machines. Current permitted development rights allow for one air source heat pump within the curtilage of a dwelling house, subject to a number of restrictions and conditions. The consultation document includes proposed changes to these restrictions and limitations to require that any part of the air source heat pump would be at least 1 metre from another dwelling, and to increase the height restriction from 2 metres to 3 metres. Restrictions and limitations relating to World Heritage sites, conservation areas and listed buildings, etc. will remain unchanged. The consultation document also proposes a requirement that air source heat pump must comply with microgeneration certificate scheme planning standards or equivalent standards. Officers in consultation with the Council's Environmental Health Department proposed to respond to DFI expressing concerns that the proposed changes to the permitted development rights could have an unacceptable adverse impact on the amenity of a significant number of adjacent households. The GPDO currently provides permitted development rights for the provision of a ground or water source heat pump within the curtilage of a dwelling house, subject to certain conditions and limitations. The consultation document is proposing to provide for permitted development rights for the provision of ground or water source heat pumps within the curtilage of a dwelling house with no conditions or limitations. Officers in consultation with the Council's Environmental Health Department are supportive of the proposals to extend permitted development rights, subject to a condition relating to sufficient enclosure and resilient mountain to ensure there are no unacceptable noise impacts. There are currently no permitted development rights in Northern Ireland for domestic wind turbines. The consultation paper is seeking views on whether there is a demand or need for the introduction of such permitted development rights. Officers in consultation with the Council's Environmental Health Department agree that a permitted development rights for domestic scale wind turbines should be considered as a means of promoting renewable energy uptake, subject to detailed and suitably protective requirements being specified. The consultation is also proposing adding a new Class D to the GPDO to allow for the installation, alteration or replacement of a reverse vending machine in a wall of a shop or within the curtilage of a shop, subject to certain limitations and conditions. Officers in consultation with the Council's Environmental Health Department are supportive of the proposals to add a new Class D to allow for such developments, subject to the limitations and conditions as set out in the document. A copy of the draft response to DFI is attached at Appendix 2, and it is recommended that members approve the draft response to the Department for Infrastructure. And I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, members, there's a decision before us on this one to basically adopt the response as you can read it. Have we any queries on this one? I'm happy enough with the proposer.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman, and thank you, Roisin, for your report. No, I'm happy to propose we accept the recommendation, Chair. Don't think there's anything that's earth-shattering or anything like that, so thank you.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Lavery.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, happy to second the proposal. Given the increased use of ground source heat pumps and so on, it's likely something that we'll maybe seeing more of in future applications, particularly given the more environmentally conscious requirements that are coming in with legislation brought in last year. So as I said, happy to second the proposal. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, members. Let's see any other Lights on, our hands up, so we'll move on then. Just see to item number 3.2, and Damien's going to bring this update on the monitoring framework. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, members. Members, the report before you relates to the findings of the Northern Ireland Planning Monitoring Framework. The framework was published last December by Department of Infrastructure and covers the 2021-22 business year. The key information contained in the framework is set out in the report, and as members will note, it includes details of the Council's performance against the 3 statutory targets for planning. You will see that in relation to 2 of those targets, we performed extremely well, and in respect of the other, which relates to local applications, our performance was not as good. However, officers have made significant progress over the course of the current business year to improve performance in that area. Other key points to note, members, include that out of 76 decisions made by this committee last year, only 1 was made against the officer recommendation, and that contrasts with a much higher number of decisions against officer advice in some council areas. And just to give you an example, 1 council area, almost half decisions made by the committee was against officer recommendation. Another council area, it was 36%, and another 32%. So you can see the fairly sharp contrast. In relation to appeals, officers were successful in winning 7 out of 8 appeals, with no claims for costs being made against the council. And that also compares favourably in relation to other councils. And just to give you an example, members, in 1 council area, 17 out of 21 appeals were lost, 7 out of 9 in another, and 6 out of 9 in another. So, look, I suppose one of the conclusions to reach from that is that it would seem to send out a fairly strong message regarding the high quality of our decision making over the course of the last business year. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Any members, any questions on this one? Councillor Nicholson.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks, Damien. Damien, you referred to local applications were not performing so well, and I know there is things have been put in place, you know, through this committee and through working groups and things. Have you any sort of indication if those are beginning to work yourself? Because obviously we'd like to get our local applications up to speed with everything else. I suppose leads on, I suppose, on the next thing, you know, like, what's our backlog at the minute? Are we sort of getting sort of up to speed where we were previous to COVID, or close to? I suppose you may be touching that in the next bit anyway. So thanks, Damien.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Nicholson. Yeah, in relation to locals, yeah, look, our performance on locals last business year was we came in at 25 weeks. You know, against a 15-week target, which was disappointing. Now that really does go back to the legacy from COVID in terms of, you know, the period of time where the office was closed, the high vacancy levels, the, you know, really high case numbers that came in during COVID. Since that time, since the end of the last business year, we are now down to, you'll see in the report that comes next, our performance against the locals is now 20 weeks. So we've gone from 25 to 20. So that is significant progress, and we'll continue to build on that. Now, you members will recall in terms of the backlog that we had just before Christmas, we've got ourselves down to 860 applications. You know, that had dropped from, I think it was about 1,040 at the beginning of the business year. So our numbers, we've made really, really good progress. But unfortunately, the implementation of the new IT system for planning has introduced a few problems for all councils, and as a result, you know, we were sitting at 860 before Christmas. Our numbers will be above 900 again currently, but you know, we will, once the system's bedded in properly and we start to get things back to normal, we'll see our numbers drop again. But yes, in relation to that point about local applications, I am confident that, you know, the progress we've made from 25 weeks to 20, we can continue to build on that.
Okay, members, it's an item for noting. So any other queries? Alderman Anderson.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Damien. just observing, Damien, I think you said that this committee had overturned one, is that what you said, compared to other councils. Looking at it is, could we say we're doing everything right and the other ones maybe are not? Or are we doing everything wrong and maybe the other one's right? There's a disparity here. What I would ask, do we have any comparison with appeals to the PAC, these ones, and how we stack up against that? I think our past record is pretty good. So maybe that would give an indication of how we consider these applications. But it is quite honestly concerning that there's a big disparity. I don't know what was 50% you said in one or somewhere. I'm not quite sure what I didn't pick up on, but I'm just wondering why the big disparity between officers' recommendations and committees. Thank you.
Thanks, Damien.
Thanks, Chair. And thanks, Alderman Anderson. The figure I gave was almost 50% in one particular council area. I can't provide an awful lot of insight into that. But what I would say is in relation to our own, the recommendations that we made, for example, where we do go to appeal, which was your other point, 8 appeals last year and we won 7 of those. And I gave you the figures in comparison to other council areas where one council, I think it was 27, lost out of 31, I think it was mentioned. And, that comparison sits very well in relation to some other councils. So I think in terms of the quality of our decision making, I think it is there. I think it's good. In relation to when we bring applications and recommendations to members, we will offer our professional opinion, our professional advice. If members don't agree with it and we consider that there is a risk of going to appeal and losing or going to judicial review and losing, we would highlight those concerns. But at the end of the day, it is a judgment for members. But I think, looking back at last year, and this is about last year, I think the performance at appeal does highlight that the quality of our decision making was good, and that quite possibly then, members going with the majority of recommendations was the correct thing to do. We'll never get it completely right. No planning authority will get it completely right. But I just think that those figures make interesting reading. And in relation to the number of overturns by members, I think, the small number, it's backed up by our performance at appeal. I think it gives, as officers, gives us an assurance that we're doing something right, and hopefully we'll give members that assurance as well.
Thanks, Damien. I'm just suppose following on from that, in terms of when you have a council with 50% decisions been turned over, the oversight, does it lie ultimately with the department, or is it solely down then to the outlets of the Appeals Commission or JR procedures? Who, out of a concern if we were overturning 50% of decisions in this chamber, because you'd be automatically, or well, the perception from the public would automatically be either the officers aren't coming up with a robust decision, or councillors are just playing fast and loose with the procedure and are really not regarding the views of the officers. So I'm just keen to understand, what's the outcome of that? Because I know the Department for Infrastructure at one point were in one of these meetings, they did review the procedure. So what's the ultimate outcome of that? Ours obviously has been backed up, as you said, by the facts and the figures from the Planning Appeals Commissioner. So how does it stack? What's the ultimate oversight or what's the lessons to be learned from that for any particular council?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, I think there's probably a number of factors that contribute maybe to the position we find ourselves in. Look, members will be aware there's a significant amount of capacity building done with members. We bring legal advisors in on a continuous basis. We have a legal advisor in attendance at committee at all times. We put a considerable amount of effort into looking at our reports and the quality of our reports, and you know, we have a very forensic approach to preparing for committee. And I hope that the quality of the recommendations we bring is good. And I think the Paleys situation tends to back that up. In relation to what is going on in other councils, you know, the Department for Infrastructure, the Regional Planning Authority may want to take a look at this and look at the inconsistencies in the figures that pick this up. And members will recall reports that were produced last year by the Public Accounts Committee, the Northern Ireland Law Office, and they looked at inconsistencies in approaches across all councils. You know, they will be taking a look at these figures and wouldn't be surprising if they decided to, you know, dig a little deeper to find out just what does lie behind this. Everybody's planning authority and planning committee is not exactly the same. And I think there's a lot of factors that contribute to the figures that are before us. But, you know, going back to the original point I made, I think around the capacity building that we do with members from bringing in KCs, having a legal advisor in attendance, and obviously, you know, the amount of effort we put into our reports, I think that does play a part. At least I hope it does, and sort of bringing out the figures that you see before you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, David. Councillor Nicholson.
Yeah, Chairman, thank you, and thanks, Damien. I suppose not to over-egg it, you know, you're right, Damien. Like, if our figures were that we were being overturned in appeal, a decision we made, then we would have something to actually ask ourselves, what are we doing wrong? But I actually think, you know, you're right, Damien. The figures that, you know, there's only so many are overturned within the committee on officer's recommendation, and then those recommendations obviously go to appeal, and the appeals stand over the committee's decision. I think we're in a very good position, and I do think you're right too. Working with other planning committees, you know, they are different right across the board. They're made up different. They've different structures, etc., and they deal with things differently. But as I say, I think it's a good thing. You know, I think that's an indication that we're maybe not on the money, but we're very close, you know, to where planning policy is and where the planning appeals see it. But as I say, I think it's something that we've been quite consistent since the start, and I think it is down to, you know, you guys arranging the educational piece to all committee members and bringing in legal advice and KSCs when they're needed and things. So I think we just have to continue on that route and make it a very, you know, sort of, as you say, that the reports come in front of us, they're very detailed, you know, and they're all well thought out. And I think it's testimony when you quote those figures, in my opinion, you know, I think it's a good thing. I don't think we should be looking to overturn us, put that way, as a committee anymore, unless it deserves it. But, you know, we do have some interesting debates here, you know, on many evenings, and I'm sure we will too in the future. So, but look, as I said, I think it's testimony that we're running a good path here as a committee. So, thanks, Damien, for you and the staff. So.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and I suppose that's, you know, the flip side of that is, you know, it raises my concerns where you have this idea that the same procedures and processes should apply across all 11 councils. Then in another jurisdiction, half of what the officer team does is disregarded and overturned for whatever reason. I think it would be, just from a pure perspective of interest, it would be good to understand, you know, from another jurisdiction's perspective, why that's the case. Because we put a lot of, you know, foundation on the fact that we do have a very robust and transparent process here, and we're not overturning 50% of applications, as has been said. We've done one last year. So I think what it does is, to me, it just it makes me ask questions of other areas, and it's something I wouldn't mind pursuing a bit further. However, that is able to be done just from a general perspective. But anyway, that's for noting. 3.3 then, which is the statistical bulletin, and Damien again.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Members, the report before you provides an analysis of the statistical infrastructure for Q2 of the current business year. And the bulletin provides an overview of planning activity across Northern Ireland. You'll note that out of 11 councils, we received the fourth highest number of applications, which is extremely positive news from a planning income perspective. We also issued the fifth highest number of decisions, and in doing so, it played a significant role in enabling and delivering investment and job opportunities in the borough. Members may also wish to note that the council's approval rate in Q2 was 90%, which actually, and unusually, was the lowest of the 11 councils. We would normally be sitting in around sort of midway point for just probably a bit of an anomaly. We were at 90% during Q2. With regard to performance against statutory targets, the council was successful in meeting one of its 3 targets, and that was in planning enforcement. An area in which we not only met the target but exceeded it, and furthermore, by processing 84% of our enforcement cases within 39 weeks, we were significantly better than the Northern Ireland average of 73%. In relation to local planning applications, the council recorded an average processing time of 20 weeks, so it sort of follows on from the point I made earlier. We were 25 weeks last year, currently 20 weeks. And unfortunately, we missed the statutory target of 15 weeks. And while that is disappointing, members, it's mainly a consequence of the ongoing challenges around high caseloads and staff vacancies, which we are working hard to address, and also because staff resources were diverted to help test, trial and train for the new IT system during Q2. It's also worth mentioning that our performance on locals represents an improvement on Q1. As I've mentioned, and demonstrates that good progress has been made in this area. Also worth mentioning, members, that only 4 councils managed to meet the locals target, and all 4 received significantly fewer applications than we did. With regard to major applications, our average processing time was 34 weeks, which only marginally missed the statutory target, and we were actually second best performing council in Northern Ireland against the majors target. So happy to take any questions, Chair. Thank you.
Damien, so any questions, members, on the statistical bulletin? Don't see any, so we'll go again to Damien for an update on planning caseloads.
Thank you, Chair. Members, you'll see from the report that due to technical issues associated with the new IT system, that we've been unable to provide reliable and accurate statistical information this month. Those issues are actually affecting all planning authorities using the new system. And the heads of planning group have written on behalf of all councils to the supplier to urge them to address these issues as soon as possible. And I can tell you that a meeting with the supplier is scheduled to take place next week. And at that meeting, we'll be reinforcing the urgency and need for a quick resolution. And I'll be obviously keeping members updated on that, but certainly I would hope by next month, next planning committee, we will be in a position to give you figures, members, so apologies for that.
Okay, thanks, Damien. We'll move on then to agenda item 4, which is an update from the head of building control. And Tom, you're going to take us through this one. Thank you. Number 1 there, or 4.1.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, members. Item 4.1 is the request for the naming of the remaining phases of a current large housing development consisting of 198 houses, and that's in the Ansborough Road in Lurgan, and details are in Appendix 1. The applicant has proposed the following names for the remaining phases of the development. There's Drumna Grove, Drumna Close, Drumna Lane, Drumna Mews, and they're in various colours on the attached map in Appendix 1. And the applicant has chosen the names of these remaining phases as they marry with obviously the Drumna theme, which are already established. And members will recall the council previously approved the names Drumna Avenue, Drumna Walk, and Drumna Drive. Recommendation, therefore, is for members' approval to the names Drumna Grove, Drumna Close, Drumna Lane, and Drumna Mews for the remaining phases of this current development. Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to take any questions members may have.
Thank you, Tom. Councillor Lavery.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I can remember the naming of Drumna Walk. I think it was in 2020. I know there was some debate about that time, whether the Drumna name should be kept or we should be reusing the name of the original townland, Drumna Kelly. which is an anglicisation of the original townland name. As you maybe recall, Chair, I was in favour of keeping the Drumnakelly name, because I think it would be the most appropriate name for this location. I think I made that proposal at the time, but it unfortunately did not go through at that time. I think it's imperative that we ourselves keep our named heritage in place, and as discussed at the time for the previous naming of the Drumnakelly Walk, I think Drumnakelly is the most appropriate name for this development, and maintain that link with our past. Therefore, given that, and I would be prepared to make a proposal that rather than the names suggested by the developer, we instead name the streets Drumnakelly Grove, Drumnakelly Close, Drumnakelly Lane, and Drumnakelly Mews, to keep our named heritage preserved for future generations. If there's a seconder for that. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Twyvell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I thought the councillor was going to suggest this name, and I would now take on the responsibility of proposing this name, because I think it would be silly to have. I know there was a case that the councillor was advocating about the previous time when we were making a decision, but to put a different name in the middle of this development, I think would be foolish now. So I propose the suggested name here.
Thank you, Alderman Twyvell. Councillor Nicholson.
Yes, Chairman, thank you, and thanks, Tom. And like Alderman Twyvell beside me, I think we've had this debate, and I think it would be strange to change a name in the middle of a development. So I'm happy to second Alderman Twyvell's proposal to accept the recommendation in front of us this evening. Thank you. This afternoon.
Okay, thank you. Don't have any other lights on, so we will move then to 4.2. And again, Tom, thank you.
Chair, I didn't disagree. I don't agree with that decision on 4.1. Sorry. Do not need to go to a vote.
I don't think you have a seconder though. So you don't really have a proposal. You have a disagreement, Councillor Lavery, but it's which has been noted as on the minute and it's on the record. So I'm content as chair to. Okay, so my legal team here have stated that I have to have a vote on this for some particular reason, which I abide by, but I'm not terribly happy about. I think it's a bit of a diversion here, but we will.
Thank you.
Anyway.
I'd like to request a recorded vote, and the reason is democracy. Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Lavery. Don't appreciate that, to be perfectly honest with you. It's not how we run our committee. You always put your hand up and then you're brought in, as I do and everybody else does. So I get the point you're trying to make, but just respect the you don't have to respect me, but just respect the chair, as in the function of the chair. So on that basis, we'll proceed with a vote on the only proposal that's on the table, which was proposed by Alderman Twyvell and seconded by Councillor Nicholson. So this process is simply to verify that. So I will call everyone in alphabetical order. And I'll start with Alderman Anderson.
Yes.
Thank you. Alderman Barr.
Good afternoon, Chairman. Yes, thank you.
Alderman Twyvell.
Do I need to record again? Yes, I do. Yeah, okay. Agreed.
Self, yeah. Councillor Duffy. Is Councillor McAlinden on? He is, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Yes.
Councillor McGowan? No, okay. Councillor McNally? No. Councillor Mudry? No. Councillor Nicholson? Is he? Oh, sorry.
Amber, at the time of the voting, I will not be casting a vote.
Okay, sorry for missing you there. Just Councillor Nicholson.
Yes, Chair.
Councillor Savage, Vice Chair. I don't think he's on. Okay, Councillor Tolman. I think is on either. Councillor Wilson.
Yes, Chair.
And Councillor Lavery.
No, Chair. Thank you.
So the results of that are for the proposal 8, against 1 and abstain 1. And I'll just read it out as Councillor Lavery requested a recorded vote. So Alderman Anderson for, Alderman Barr for, Alderman Twyvell for, Alderman Wilson for, Councillor Duffy for, Councillor McAlinden for, Councillor Mudry abstain, Councillor Nicholson for, Councillor Wilson for, Councillor Lavery against. Okay, so at the end of that, it's as we know. So on that basis, we'll move on to 4.2. Tom, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Item 4.2 is a request for the naming of a housing development consisting of 4 dwellings of Bowen's Mews in Lurgan, and details are contained in Appendix 2. The applicant's preferred name for the development is Bowen's Court, and the applicant's main reason is that the preferred name for the development is a continuation of Bowen's Mews. Recommendation therefore is for members for approval of Bowen's Court. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, members, you've heard Tom's report on that one. Councillor Duffy.
Yes, Chair. I'll just propose recommendation.
Yes. Thank you. And Alderman Twyvell.
And again, Mr. Chairman, very happy to second the proposal.
Okay, thank you. And we will move on then to 4.3. And this is update on the fire safety conference. And Tom, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This report is to provide members information in relation to a building control fire safety conference to be held for the 4th time in a row in the Armagh City Hotel on the 23rd and 24th of February. This is a prestigious event, and this being its 25th year, it also celebrates 50 years since building regulations were first introduced into Northern Ireland. The final conference agenda is still being published this week, and I can forward any member who wishes to see the full agenda for this event. This year's speakers include government officials, fire safety professionals, the fire brigade, product manufacturers, research establishments, and fire investigators. The aim of the conference is to promote and share the fire safety knowledge and expertise, and will examine current issues regarding fire safety, and also look at the changes unfolding to the building regulatory system in England and Wales as a result of the Grenfell inquiry, which will inevitably follow through to Northern Ireland. And that's for looking at accountabilities and competencies within the whole construction sector. So given the significant focus and importance that fire safety issues have, particularly in light of recent tragic fires, it is requested that members approve the attendance of officers to attend this event. Members are also encouraged to attend, particularly those who have an interest in fire safety. Costs are as detailed in the report, and money is available in the building control budget to cover the cost of a recommended cost of officers' attendance. So the recommendation therefore is for members to consider the report and approve the alliance of officers to attend this fire safety conference, along with any members who may wish to attend. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members, have we a proposer and seconder on this recommendation? Councillor Nicholson.
Yeah, Chairman, thank you. And as Tom said, I think this is the first one, Tom, since COVID, isn't it? It's been a couple of years since the last one, and there's been a lot of changes in fire safety and fire regulations over that period, and in particular after the Grenfell tragedy. So, look, Chairman, I'm happy to propose the recommendation in front of us this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lavery.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, be in agreement with Councillor Nicholson there. I think it's imperative that officers attend this conference that is being held in the Borough, given the safety potential and outcomes. So happy to second the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I don't have any other lights on or hands up, so we move on then to 4.4, which is an item for information. Tom, again, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This is just to update members on some of the workload undertaken by departments during the last 9 months. For the last 9 months alone, we've received 2,653 applications with a notional construction investment value in the Borough of just over 352 million, which is approximately 100 million more than previous couple of years, which were considered to be very busy. We have also carried out over 11,223 site inspections and undertaken 1,773 plan assessments and issued all the appropriate statutory decision notices. The department has also continued to deliver the Council's property certificate function for the convention of properties across the Borough. In the first 9 months, we have received and administered 2,716 new applications and issued 2,784 certificates to solicitors and agents relating to property sales, and all within the targeted 10 days. Thank you, Chair. This report is for members' information, but I'm happy to take any questions members may have.
Thank you, Tom. Any questions or queries on this one? It is an item for info. I don't see any lights on. So we'll push on then to agenda item 5. Could I have a proposer and seconder to move the council into committee, please? Alderman Anderson, Councillor Nicholson. Thank you. So I have to read the following statement. Members and online viewers, in accordance with Schedule 6 of the Local Government Act, we will now be moving into a confidential session of the council. This means that we'll be turning off the public feed of the meeting. This will be returned when the meeting is restarted. Can I now ask the ICT officers to please turn off the live feed and confirm with me when the confidential section of this meeting can proceed? Thank you. Thank you, Daniel. Okay, we'll move on to item 7, which is correspondence. Signed listing schedule. Damien taking this one? Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Members, 2 items of correspondence to draw your attention to. One is confirmation from Department for Communities that the telephone kiosk at Banbridge that would have come before you in the last month or 2 has been confirmed as a listed building. It's now in a listed structure rather than building, I suppose. So confirmation of that. And the other item of correspondence is a letter from the Northern Ireland Housing Council highlighting the benefits of applying lifetime home standards across public and private housing stock and urging planning authorities to prioritise inclusion of lifetime home standards in local development plans. So an accessible and adaptable homes policy is proposed to be included in the Council's local development plan, subject, of course, to approval of members. And details of that policy will be discussed at a future workshop with members, probably in February or March. So happy to take any queries on that, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, members, any questions or queries? Nope, not seeing any lights on. Okay, that brings us to the end of that portion of our meeting. So I'm going to give you a short recess, and what's 4 o'clock now. We'll come back maybe 10 past, give you 10 minutes, and then we'll kick off with our applications. Thank you.